radio friends, on Friday, April the 10th, going into the weekend, we've got the State Historical Society with us. JOAN STACK, good to have you here. And Joan, you brought along a special guest yourself. This is
JEAN Parsons from the Textile and Apparel Management Department at the University of Missouri.
Good to have you here,
Thank you.
So how does JEAN fit in with the Historical Society?
Well, we are doing an exciting exhibit right now for the spring. We began during Women's History Month of clothing related to World War I and World War II. And so we are bringing in clothing from the historic costume and textiles collection at the University of Missouri. And so JEAN is in charge of all of that.
From World War I and World War II. When I think of that era, I think of the Andrews sisters and the kind of clothes that they wore. You know what I'm talking about?
I absolutely know what you're talking about.
Yeah, you've got a magazine here. You want to hold this up and show it? And right there, I think of the Andrews sisters.
Well,
But
except that this is World War I.
Yeah.
And this is actually the image we are using as a focal point for the show and for our advertising.
Okay, if you want to see what we're talking about, you can watch the vodcast of this program. Go to kbia.org and watch the vodcast. But for people who are listening on the radio, explain what we're looking at here.
You're looking at the cover of a magazine called The Delineator from 1918, and it's showing women in a period of war, and both women actually have uniforms on. There's a woman in a fashionable dress behind them, and then there's a gentleman in uniform.
Yeah, and the women look very chic in their outfit.
Yes.
And these were military uniforms.
Women were not officially in the military at this point, but they did have roles in the military, working with the military in World War I, and then they had more official roles in World War II.
So what kind of uniforms would these be then?
They were working in sometimes secretarial roles. They were working in a variety of roles with the Navy in World War I.
So what are we going to see at this show?
The show is called World at War, Women at Work, and it's showing how women's roles changed during war times, especially the two world wars. So we're looking at clothing that connects us to the history of women's roles in those periods.
Do you have the actual clothing from that time period? Not recreated, but the actual?
No, this is the actual clothing. We have clothing from World War I. We have uniforms that they wore in World War II, that women wore, and then we have clothing from World War II, as well as some wedding dresses, because a lot of women and men and women got married very quickly in World War II, so we have some of their wedding dresses.
Yeah. Do you have men's clothing also?
We have some men's clothing, but the focus is really on women.
How many different items can people see?
We have 25 to 26 fully dressed mannequins, as well as items on the wall, and we have propaganda posters that are from the State Historical Society from the two wars.
Yeah. So some of this clothing is close to 100 years old or more.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
Is it fragile?
No, we try to put things on exhibit that can withstand being under the lights and on exhibit, so they're not terribly fragile.
What would you say is the most unusual piece that people are going to see and they're going to walk out and say, oh my goodness, I'm so glad I saw that?
Well, one of the things that we have connected with the exhibit are some illustrations. During World War II, of course, France was cut off and we didn't have access to French style. So we do have some illustrations done right before the war that were snuck back into the country. So I think my students in particular found the illustrations really interesting.
How much research went into putting this all together?
Well, there was a lot of research on women's roles and on the clothing themselves.
And how did you come up with the clothing?
It's part of our collection. We have 5,000 to 6,000 pieces in the Missouri Historic.
Oh, you've got 5,000 to 6,000 pieces?
Yes, sir.
Then I guess my question should be, how did you narrow it down to, what is it, 20 or 25 that you have?
Yes, that was the hard part.
Narrowing it down.
Narrowing it down, yes.
So how did you decide?
We decided on the things that most represented the different roles that women had during the war. Things that shown the in uniform, things that represented fashion during the period and the regulations on fashion during the period.
Yeah, Joan, and this show will be up how long?
Well, we close on June 6th. One of my favorites is the nurse's uniform, and the nurse actually wore a kind of a veil, and so it's really
A veil
interesting.
over her face?
No,
behind.
behind her cap. And so you see,
was it really a veil, or was it was a cloth that just went on?
It's more of a cloth that goes behind.
Yeah, because
holds
I
her
remember
hair.
seeing pictures like that.
Yes.
yeah.
Yes.
So it's very interesting, different from what you're used to.
And the show will be up and running until
June 6th.
And so if people want to come in, what are the hours?
Oh, well, we're open on Tuesday through Friday from 9 to 4:30.
Okay.
And on Saturday from 9 to 3:30.
And it will be open until June the 6th. It's called
World at War, Women at Work.
World at War, Women at Work. What's coming up after that then?
Well, we will be doing an exhibit of Tom Inglehart's cartoons that will open a little bit before that on May 9th in the Corridor Gallery.
So it'll be running
at the same time.
simultaneously.
And then we are going to open an exhibit on the artwork of John James Audubon. So that's going to be exciting.
So there is a lot going on all summer long. In fact, right now through the
That's
summer.
right.
How far in advance, Joan, do you decide what your exhibits are going to be?
Well, I would say about a year in advance we start talking
Really?
about it. Yeah.
So right now you're working on what we're going to be seeing next year.
Or we're thinking about it.
Okay. Right. If people want more information, the website that they can go to will list everything that is going on in your hours that you're open.
Yeah.
And what is the web address?
Well, the best thing would be to probably Google it. We are the shs.com, but as I said, I'm not absolutely positive of the
so
address.
just go to Google and put in the State Historical Society
That's
of
right.
Missouri, and then you can click on it and you get all the information that you want.
That's right.
Jean, is there anything else that you want to add about this?
No, I think it's a very exciting exhibit, and it's wonderful to collaborate with the State Historical Society.
You brought along, we've got just a real short time. Lowell, can you get one more shot? What's the other magazine that you
It's
have
another
here?
magazine from the World War I era, and we have a dress in the exhibit that looks very similar to the dress that's on the cover.
Tell us about that picture for people who are not watching it.
This is a cover from the Delineator magazine, and it's from 1917.
Okay. If you want to see this, kbia.org, watch the vodcast. Ladies, thank you so much for coming by. It's a pleasure having you here.
Thank you.
Monday, Council for Drug-Free Youth. We're going to have Joy Sweeney, and she has some really important information to share with all of us. Our program, directed by Travis McMillan, Reynolds Journalism Institute. Audio with Pat Akers from KBIA. Our flow director is Lowell Thomas, and our assistant producer and guest coordinator, Uncle James Mouser. Bye-bye.